All right, welcome everybody to the first monthly professional development webinar. Today we have Susan and Nima who are presenting recipes for effective online teaching, curated videos plus activities. And if you enjoyed today's session, join us next month on October 17th for Think Your Way Out of the Problem, also Thursday at 3 o'clock. And with that, I will turn everything over to Susan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Tade, and I will be sharing my screen with you. So give me 1 second as I get started to do that. I'm going to take the stage away from Suzanne there. And now you should be seeing my screen. Can you confirm that, Suzanne?
Looks good to me.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Welcome, everyone. As Suzanne said, my name is Susan Tade. I'm an academic technologist with the University of Minnesota, and my colleague, Nima Salehi, is joining me, and she's an instructional designer with the School of Nursing at the University of Minnesota. And today we're going to be talking with you and sharing with you our recipes for effective online teaching. To get started, what we'd like you to do is share with us what your role is at your institution. Are you a faculty or instructor? Are you an instructional designer, an academic technologist, part of the staff? Or are you part of the administration that kind of keeps everything rolling? If you could put that message in the chat so that Nima and I have a good idea of who all is here today, it would be really helpful. And you guys are already starting, so wonderful. Thank you very much. Today, what we're going to be talking about, research tells us that recording hours of video lectures for online or flipped classes is really an ineffective online teaching resource. And numerous studies have shown us that the viewing rates of these videos drop significantly after about 6 minutes. So students simply are not watching them. And it takes a significant amount of time on your part as an instructor, time and effort to create these video recordings. And so how can you ensure, how can we all ensure that the students that we're sharing our videos with will actually watch them, and so that your time and your effort isn't wasted? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to highlight the key research on the types of videos you should be creating. We're going to identify some strategies that you can use to create focused video presentations. And we're going to provide you with some suggestions for student activities that can be done prior to, during, and after watching the course videos that you've created. Oh, excuse me, I just zoomed in accidentally. That will help ensure greater engagement and deeper learning on part of your students. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide, and we had planned on doing a few polls with a yes or no answer, but we've realized now that you don't have a yes or no button in your panel. So right now, in answering the questions that we're going to be putting forth to you, simply add yes or no into the chat. And so originally we thought you had those little buttons, but you don't. So now we're going to move on to the actual content of the day. What we're going to start with is talking to you about 2 frameworks that really much of the research that we're going to be sharing with you is based on and references. And the first is measuring cognitive load. According to Cynthia Bram, who is a Vanderbilt University Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning, and she's a senior lecturer of biology, one of the primary considerations when you're constructing any educational materials, including video, is cognitive load. But what do we mean by cognitive load? What we mean is that every learning experience has 3 components: the intrinsic load, the germane load, and the extraneous load. The intrinsic load is the inherent level of difficulty that's associated with the specific instructional topic. And it also includes any kind of prior connections that your students have to the subject, or maybe lack of connection that can either help or hinder the student learning. The germane load is the level of activity or kind of the processing power that's needed for learning to occur. And extraneous load is just all that information or input that doesn't really help and can actually hinder learning. So our conclusion here is that in order to measure cognitive load when you're creating your video lectures, you need to really measure the intrinsic load. What is that level of difficulty or that effort that's necessary for your students to actually process the content? And will they have any kind of connection to the content prior to coming into and being exposed to the information? You need to make sure you promote the germane load when you're designing these presentations. You need to make sure that you keep the content relevant and aligned to your learning objectives. We're going to talk about that a lot more. And you're going to need to eliminate or just decrease at least any extraneous load. Make sure you're not putting in unnecessary content or information that really kind of gets in the way. So we're going to go to our first poll. Okay, and again, just yes or no in the chat. Have you or do you consider cognitive load when you're creating your video presentations? So yes or no. And I'm seeing a yes already, so yay. Okay, good for you. I'm going to move on. As you're putting in your answers, I'm going to be moving on to the next framework that we're going to talk about, because what we ultimately want to do is we want to create long-term memory for our students. This information that we're sharing with them, that's where we want our learning to end up. So memory has multiple components. Okay, we have the sensory memory, the working memory, and the long-term memory. And in order for any kind of learning for your students to occur, student understanding must be moved from sensory through working and into long-term memory. So building on this cognitive load theory, we turn to this theory, which is called the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, which suggests that students could learn more deeply by using a multimedia explanation rather than mere verbal or text explanation. Here is what we see in sensory memory is in sensory memory, there's actually two channels, a visual channel and a verbal channel. If you can combine the words and the pictures, you can enhance learning. So as long as we don't exceed the cognitive load. And then in working memory, this is where there's very limited capacity for input. So that's where we need to be very careful about the content that we're selecting. Here we need to consider what our learning objectives are and the assessments as well to determine what needs to be in the lectures and what can be cut down to reduce extraneous load. And instructional designers often use this as kind of a backward design technique when they're doing course design. Ultimately, the goal for you as the instructor and for your students actually is to add it to the long-term memory. Long-term memory occurs when short-term memory activities is combined with active learning that can actually solidify the learning. And Nima is going to be talking about that more shortly. So shorter, more focused presentations or lectures combined with strategic active learning can help create that long-term memory. So before we get into our recommendations and our kind of recipes, I have one more poll for you. Do you think that the cognitive theory of multimedia learning is a useful consideration when you're creating your video presentation? Yes or no? Okay, I'm glad you're agreeing. Absolutely, I like that. So now we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts here. So based on these very, very important frameworks, which can help us make determinations as we're creating video, we need to trim our content. Okay, we need to kind of cut it right in half. We need to create or shorten our video lectures. Our research that we have looked at, and we're going to be sharing all this research information and links to this information to you at the very end. These shorter videos can increase the viewing time for our videos, and it can improve learning outcomes and the likelihood that they are going to actually rewatch those videos. So making sure that our content is cut in half is vital. But how do we effectively trim our content? That's the hard part. So one of the things that we recommend is that you invest in pre-production effort so that you can focus the content onto the key content. You as the instructor have all kinds of a wealth of knowledge in your mind, and you probably could impart way more than the students really need to actually absorb the information. So if you use tools like creating an outline, writing a script, it really keeps you focused. Now, many people who are experts really don't need that because they know everything, and we realize that, but keep creating that outline and writing a script keeps you focused on the content so that you don't get off onto a tangent or into things that they probably are relevant, but not necessary for learning. So it keeps you focused. 3 to 6 minutes is an ideal time. After 10 minutes, viewing will drop off rapidly. That is demonstrated. So shorter videos and can actually also increase the post-viewing time of any kind of activities that Nima is going to be talking about shortly. You need to weed or curate your content. So eliminate any excess information or distractors so you can avoid that extraneous load that we were talking about. And curate the content to focus the information on the very relevant learning goals. So that's the germane load or the authentic learning and authentic purpose that your students will have. And then you can segment and align your content. So explicitly create a one-to-one relationship with the content and the learning objectives to facilitate the germane load. I actually like to recommend that any video I create, one objective for that video, and I want to make sure that I meet that objective for that video and keep the content trimmed to that. So chunking this content into digestible pieces for your students really optimizes their intrinsic load. So keep it short, keep it relevant, and make sure that your students know why they should invest their time in watching these videos. And again, Nima's going to talk about that again shortly. The next thing we want you to do is we wanted you to mix in some clear cues, okay? We discussed this dual channel in their sensory memory. You know, with pictures and spoken words, the information is actually only processed through two channels, so allowing for more efficient processing. Pictures and printed words actually are only through a single channel. So verbal and visual combined together enhance learning. All of our research that we looked at, cue in on this item because it is so important. And if you can add in any signaling using symbols or text to highlight the important points, that's really helps with the germane load, and it helps really the novice learner to understand what's really, really important. The next thing I want to talk to you about is what I like to think of as our sweetener. It's like adding in that engaging instructor voice. If you have a strong presence, a strong faculty presence, the students are much more engaged. They want to continue to listen to you. Having a talking head, I have my talking head talking to you because I want you to know that I'm invested in you and that I really want to have a conversation with you. I'm trying hard to look right at you in the eye because I'm looking right into my camera. Students appreciate that. And they also appreciate a more informal versus a formal language. So, be personal with your students. Be looking at them straight away and make sure that they know that you're invested. So having that ability to try, and it's not easy to talk to a camera and to try and be engaging. So it's very hard, but I know you can all do it. But thinking of somebody that you really like, thinking of your students as you're talking to the camera and making sure they know that you're invested. So some things that are very important for this kind of delivery is to have good audio. It's very important that they can hear you well, speak clearly and quickly and with some energy, because they want to know it's a conversation. Again, a more informal style, students are much more engaged. Movement and animation is great and it can really enhance it. If you have a lot that your students need to see and you don't want to actually be on the screen the whole time, that's fine too. But introducing the topic and starting it out with you talking to them and then saying, okay, now I'm going to take my video away so that I can keep you keyed in on the content that we're speaking about so that they know they need to focus their attention. So those are some of the things that we recommend. What are your key takeaways so far? Can you share in the chat what is the thing that's resonated with you the most as we've talked about these recommendations and these recipes that we feel are so important? 3 to 6 minutes. Keep it short. I like it. Energy. I like that too. Thank you. Digestible. Hey, you guys are all listening. That's really great. So Nima, as we're looking at all of these comments, I am going to stop my video and hand it over to you.
Thank you. And can everyone hear me? Susan, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. I'd like to apologize in advance. I'm coming off a cold, so if I do a little bit of coughing and sneezing, my apologies in advance. But so if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to incorporate active learning in your lecture videos. And so I'm going to first start off with a little bit of information about why you would do pre and in-video activities. So once you have your video lectures curated and shortened, what else enhances learner engagement and deeper learning? Research shows us that providing pre-watching frameworks, such as indicating how the lecture aligns with learning objectives, how the module content is especially relevant for their careers, these both enhance engagement and student motivation to watch your lectures. Providing students with pre-video guiding questions or a quick outline of key points to focus on can help them process the video content better. Even letting your students know before they watch the lecture that there will be a follow-up quiz can increase the student's ability to absorb video lecture content. All of these pre-video watching frameworks provide context that helps students learn the content better, focus, and feel more engaged. So think about this. You're probably already doing this with your in-class lectures. Are you also doing this with your online lectures that you're providing students? So we're going to do a quick poll. And the question is, are you already providing pre-video activities or guiding questions for your in-class or online video lectures? So I'm seeing a mixed reaction. Some yes, some no, some say depends. So I'd like you to consider that, the importance of, often when we put things online, we're just putting a link and we're like, oh, they're just going to absorb it. But you wouldn't do that in class. And so you have to kind of take those in-class strategies and see how do you develop them online with pre-video activities. So I'm going to jump back. And so in video activities, if your lecture is longer than 6 minutes, and we hope it isn't, but if it is, then you need to provide in-video questions or a mid-lecture summary, or even just a slide that asks viewers to think about what they've just watched and jot down key points. So what you want to do is you want to chop up that video and the learning that comes from the video. So with an in-video activity, it doesn't have to be a quiz. It can be a quiz, but it can also be all of the other things that I listed. They don't have to include complex questions or even more than one question. An in-video quiz is an opportunity for students to pause and regroup and absorb the content. Anything that provides some framework or structure to their watching will help the students process the content. The more thoughtful and on target the question is in helping them focus on key content, the better they'll learn. In-video quizzes can be done by simply adding a slide with questions or a question or a brief mid-lecture summary. So for example, if you're using some kind of narrative video lecture, you can just, like VoiceThread or Screencast-O-Matic, you can just add a slide that just, that just gives a little kind of summary. And that helps them pause and regroup. It can even be a slide that says, pause your video lecture and take some notes. So there are lots of different ways you can do this. So some of you may have already had experience with VoiceThread, Screencast-O-Matic, Kaltura video capture. All of these are very easy to use tools. There are more complex tools that will do the same thing for you, but you don't have to make it more complex. It can be very simple. You have from simple to complex ways to add in mid-video lecture quiz questions or reflection pauses for your students. So remember that your students are novice learners, and providing them with pre and in-video questions or frameworks helps them understand and process the content better. So I want to go to, what are we going to do for post-video activities? How are we going to bake in that active learning? A lot of you, again, are already doing this in your in-class lectures. You're having them do follow-up quizzes, you're having them write quick reflections, you're having them do online or in-class discussions. So not just doing the pre and preparatory learning activities, but also what are they going to do afterwards? If your online lectures are shorter, students are more likely to complete these follow-up activities if they're online, and to revisit or review your video as they complete follow-up activities or study for exams. Some recommended follow-up activities are quizzes, reflections, discussions. I'm sure you can think of a lot more. Anything that produces opportunities for students to review, reflect, and analyze the information you've provided. Anything that produces active learning helps solidify student understanding and move short-term memory into long-term learning. Letting students know there is a post-video follow-up activity helps them recall more from your presentation. They become more mindful and attentive. Even if you're asking a few questions in a quiz or a discussion, this can help students learn information that's not even covered by those questions. So you don't have to think that I need a 10-question quiz or I need a 20-question quiz and have to cover every point that you have in your lecture. You can have very quick 5-question quizzes, and that will help them learn more of everything that's in your lecture. So I know that just even creating these quizzes can initially be time-consuming. And you think, oh, I can't do that on top of creating the lecture. You can start off small, 5 questions, next year 10 questions, and maybe just stop there. Again, not to extend it too much, but to help them solidify their learning. So in other words, deeper learning can occur just because you've let students know they're immediately responsible for recalling and producing the information in some kind of activity. So the way you present your media link on your page can inform students from the beginning how and why they should be processing the video, how long the video is, and what follow-up activities they can expect. These learning frameworks is what produces the results that you want as an instructor: deeper learning and better student outcomes. So I'd like to pause here for a second, and again, I'd like you to just post to the chat one activity that you're already using or that we've suggested that you can envision using to frame your online lecture and to produce essentially active learning. What is one activity that you already use or that you've heard in this presentation that you're like, yeah, this is what I do, or this is what I'd like to do?
Looks like some folks are looking at discussions and quick quizzes and a reflection, quizzes based on lecture, connecting to previous learning. I like that. Self-reflections, these are great. I use VoiceThread to contribute thought. Good. Follow-up quizzes, these are great. And students will understand after watching the video that they are going to have to use the information to solve the problem. Very good. Actually, I totally agree. Making sure that they know before they watch it what they're going to be needing to do afterward, or even kind of keying in on key aspects that they need to be looking for during the video. Great.
So great ideas. Thank you. So to summarize, what happens when you curate your videos? When you shorten the online lectures, you get more focused content. This is easier for your students to review and learn, and much easier for faculty to update from year to year. This means more current course content with a stronger impact on student learning. A delicious result all around. You also get improved learner outcomes. The shorter videos means more students will watch them, potentially revisit them, and have time to complete follow-up activities. You've reduced extraneous load, you've improved intrinsic and germane load, you've shortened and focused your video, and you've added pre and post activities, which improves assignment and exam scores, and this also enhances long-term memory and learning. And finally, when you shorten your video lectures, when you focus your content and add your video or picture, which looks directly at your viewer and really engages them, you improve student engagement overall. That means they'll be more likely to visit and revisit your carefully constructed content and activities and become successful students, gobbling up your cupcakes of wisdom and enjoying every bite. So we hope that you've gotten something out of this presentation that you can use. If you have time, please post one idea that you thought was the most valuable takeaway from this presentation. And as you're posting those, you can also post any questions that we're opening it up for. So one valuable idea from this presentation and any questions that you have.
And while people are actually in the process of doing that, I would like to add one little thing is that this is not necessarily easy to do. We are all used to lecturing for our a 50-minute course section, and chunking that content into smaller sections is not an easy task. So it may take time, and as Nima said, taking just a little bit at a time. One of the things that I like to recommend that people do is to take a piece that's one of the really hardest concepts and then maybe framing that one first. And then you can utilize that in a couple of different places. So again, it's not necessarily easy.
So we're also opening this up to questions. If you have questions you'd like to ask us, please post it in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. Also, at the end of this presentation, we have a Z-link, a short URL, where you can access the presentation handout and a list of resources and references for this presentation. There's been extensive research done on this. So this presentation is based off of just...
Oh, I'll go to the references.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I forgot.
Just hundreds and hundreds of research studies. Some of these references that we have are summaries of other research projects that have gone on. And the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, that's one of our references so that you can take a look at that, and cognitive theories for transformed learning, video-based e-learning. And so, there's a question from James. Where do I learn how to put polls in videos, link, video with quiz, etc.? I'm not familiar with VoiceThread, Screencast-O-Matic. Can you say more? Yes, VoiceThread is actually a fairly inexpensive kind of lecture narration tool that, if you're at the University of Minnesota, is centrally licensed, so it's free for both you and your students. Your institute might already have this. If they don't, it's a fairly inexpensive get for institutes. The University of Minnesota, when they licensed it, they didn't even have to do a what do they call that when you send it out to all the different companies? Oof. They didn't even have to do they didn't have to do an RFP because it was so inexpensive. Now we have gone up to a more expensive license recently, but I think again even that was not too expensive. Screencast-O-Matic is again another really great tool which is not very expensive. Kaltura, if you have a media server, Kaltura is a media server. It also they often also have built-in lecture capture tools, which will include quizzing tools. So they will have very easy to create in-video quizzes. But again, as I said, if you're using VoiceThread, which does not allow for in-video quizzes, you can just put a slide that that asks for a summary or a pause. Screencast-O-Matic does have in-video quizzes.
So we have a fair amount of questions here, and I want to get to first of all, there's one in the Q&A that James asked is, how did we get those graphics? Our graphics were created by a very talented student that works with us at the University of Minnesota, and we were very fortunate to have her. So we conceptualized the ideas of our recipes and tried to use our baking analogy, and so that's where those graphics came from. She's very talented. Let's go to some of our questions, Nima.
So there's a question from Paul. He says, when I'm writing a chemical reaction or calculation within a video, does showing every character being drawn on a bamboo tablet enhance students' learning, or does it distract from learning? So those animated presentations where you're drawing on it actually have shown to be very engaging for students. So when they see you drawing out those equations, and as you're drawing it, you're also explaining what your thought process is. You might focus, you might have some of it already there, and then you're helping students with arrows or things, or adding a few things as you go. So again, you have to think of the length. If it's going to take you a long time to draw that out, I would say have some of it done and then draw in some of the others. But any kind of animation will help engage your students, will feel more connected and real to them.
Dixie had a comment about the pre and post activities within videos and use one objective per video, so simple, but I tend to get more wordy. And Dixie, I totally agree. I actually got more wordy here today than I wanted to, and I was trying really hard to keep to my script. So that is very, very hard to do. And but I do think it really is, it makes it more simple for your students to understand. And it's worth a try. I definitely would agree that you should try and do that. Also, Melissa asks, how often do you recommend having these short videos? Nima, do you have a recommendation for that?
I would say, think about your in-class. So how much content do you have for in-class? We tend to overload students when we go online. So think about the time that you present something in class. You're probably going to do less than that online, because one of the benefits of going online is you can switch a lot of that to active learning, which you actually do in class, but you often don't realize. So when you have a video in class, you probably are not showing an hour-long video. You're showing little snippets, and then you're stopping it, and you're saying, okay, let's talk about this. And then you show a little snippet, and then you pause, and you have a discussion. You show a little snippet, you do this. So I would say don't overload when you go online. So faculty will say, okay, I lecture for an hour in class. You often don't. You're stopping, you're pausing, you're getting students engaged. So when you go online, I would say shorten what you have and then try to build in that active learning that helps them process. So I guess there's not a definite amount, but I would say maybe a half an hour of actual viewing time, and then build in the active learning. If you need to do more, but build in the active learning and try not to do too much, because when it becomes too much, students won't do it. You've spent a lot of time building in something students won't do, and then you don't know what they're really doing. The less you have, the more focused you know what they're doing, and you know what to quiz them on, and it's less work for you. So it's kind of a win-win.
Janice has asked, how can one easily edit an existing lecture into smaller chunks? And actually that kind of dovetails onto what Nima was just talking about, how in your normal lecture you have a very long lecture and you have natural sections. So you can actually, as you're listening to it, you can hear where that natural kind of change in topic or leading into topic. So segmenting it in those areas is where you would do it. In terms of the tools, it's going to depend on your institution. Video editing is not something that you just pick up and are able to do right away. But if your institution, somebody else was asking about Screencast-O-Matic, and Screencast-O-Matic is used at the University of Minnesota, but it is an online tool, and parts of it could be free. So there are some editing software out there that's less expensive, but being able to learn how to use it and chunk it, it's kind of a whole nother course. But there are resources out there.
And so we have another suggestion from Janice. She says Microsoft Stream ties in with forms and also has a free tool for in-video questions. I would say find out what your institute has. because if your institute already has it, they also probably have tech support so that you don't have to deal with the nuts and bolts of tech support, either for you or for your students. And also they might have courses on how to use the software and how you, and whether if it has in-video quizzes, how do you use that?
Janice was asking about the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. It's one of the frameworks that we talked about, and it's actually referenced in the actual, oops, I'm zooming in again, in the references. Every one of the different references actually attribute some of their findings to that theory, which is basically, understanding that audio and video together, visual and audio together combined can enhance learning. And there's the theory behind the fact that if you move it through from sensory into long-term memory, it's going to stay there if you are enhancing both of those channels. So that's what that's about, and it's definitely more in the references that we have.
Kelsey made a nice statement about Screencast-O-Matic being free up to 15 minutes, but it has limited editing. So thank you, shout out to Kelsey, thank you for that information. UT260 said there's a trade-off between video length. There seems to be a trade-off between video length and number of video files that students would access. Is there research on what constitutes a good balance? There's a lot of research on how much students will watch. And if you, and the more you have, the less they'll watch it. So, I know that one of the things that we hear from faculty a lot is they have to know all of this. But the reality is if you put all of this in your course, students can't handle it. So you have to focus. Because if you put too much in, students are going to start selecting on their own what they're going to watch or what they're not. So that's really a balance. It's hard to say. For you, the content is not as dense as it is for students. So when you do chunk it, you help, when you do provide frameworks, that does help, and study guides and questions and all this other stuff, that helps students process it. So I think when you're looking at your content, you have to include the active learning. So sometimes faculty will say, oh, for every credit, you have to give them 4 hours of content. They often don't include the hours it takes to process and do active learning. So I would say you have your content, you have your active learning, and then you have your assessments. Assessments might be part of active learning. So when you're looking at that, the content is going to be maybe 1/3 of that. And then the active learning and the assessment is going to be 2/3 of that. Often we have content which is really 100%, and then they don't think about giving a time for the other components of learning. Especially when you go online, it becomes very easy to just throw things in there. The kind of messy closet syndrome. Focusing it is going to be more effective for you because you have to create that stuff, and for your students who have to learn it.
Lori has asked a question, including a visual of the instructor presenting the video. Do you feel it's important to include this throughout the video, or is it okay to start with that and begin the beginning and gradually remove it? Yes, you can certainly do that, Lori. If it's very important for your students to actually see what's on the screen and it's more relevant and important, then certainly take your video away. That's fine. I just would recommend that you at least start out with it, because you're actually kind of giving a foundation and making your students know that you're invested and they know who you are, and they can see your face and to see that you're genuine. So I think they'll be more engaged if you at least start out with it. But I also would be very deliberate to say, okay, now I'm not going to be on the screen the whole time because I really want you to focus your attention here. Okay, and you can give them, then again, you're pointing them to what they need to learn and what they need to know. So I think that's what's really important there. Go ahead.
As you look at some of the research that we've referenced here, you'll see that some of the research indicates that when they gave students, when they did a research study where they gave students one narrated lecture, and they had a professional kind of presenter do this narrated lecture, and then they had their own instructor do the same exact lecture, the students rated the one that was done by their own instructor consistently higher, even though their own instructor might not be a professional presenter, might have ums and ahs, might not have some of the skills that that professional presenter has. Students feel connection to you. They want to see you, and they value what you say to them more than they value that same message from a professional presenter with whom they don't feel as connected. So that's something to consider.
And a lot of people use content that they find elsewhere, and so there's a different expert sharing that. What I would recommend that you do is that you frame those kinds of things with a short video of you and kind of endorsing it. And so then you, again, are chunking pieces of content. And so you're going to say, you know, this video by this person that I have on YouTube, and I've got the link right after this, I really want you to watch because this, and this is going to happen. And this is what you're going to be, you know, so this is a way to kind of tie pieces together and sequence them for your students. So, okay. And did we miss any more questions? Somebody asked what a robust version of Screencast-O-Matic cost. I'm sorry, I don't know. I wish I did. It's provided through the university. So what institution are you with? If you want to put that in there. Yeah, because it's a university license that we get to use. So I am sorry that I don't know. Century College. ScreenFlow is $149. I think Screencast-O-Matic might be a little less than that. I'm sorry, I don't know. And I can't go off to another screen, otherwise I'll take away this from your, but we'll see if we can find it out. And I'm hoping we got every question, if we addressed every question.
Yeah.
I'll look into that, thanks. Okay, thanks, Chris, sorry.
And so with Screencast-O-Matic, one of the things that you need to know is that your institute should have a media service. I mean, a media server, because if you have Screencast-O-Matic, then you have to upload the final product to a media server to then link it into your course site. VoiceThread is online to begin with, so you just create it and then link it in your course site. Kaltura is a media server with the lecture narration tool built in. So you can have a group of your faculty. Oh, and I think Screencast-O-Matic, if you're purchasing it like that, there is a cost also for uploading it to their media server.
But you could use YouTube. You could use YouTube.
You could use YouTube,
right?
Yes.
But it depends on how broadly you want to share your video. You know,
True. And
Kelsey just shared with us that Screencast-O-Matic for an individual is $1.50 a month. Wow.
For deluxe. Or $4 a month for premium. And I'm not sure if that covers server costs, but as Susan says, you could upload it to YouTube. I don't know if the in-video quizzes will work if you upload it to YouTube. I wonder if YouTube has in-video quizzes now.
I think it might. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Panopto also, I think, has a lecture capture video tool as well.
Yeah, Panopto is very comparable to Kaltura. And again, I don't know a lot about it because we don't have it here, but it was part of our one of the tools we examined before we went with Kaltura. And Janet asks a very good question. Do you close caption these videos or only if a student needs the edit? At the University of Minnesota, it is encouraged that every video be captioned. And from our services perspective, we caption everything.
Yeah, and also in our Kaltura instance, we have it set so that every video upload is automatically captioned. Our VoiceThread license includes automatic captions.
However, we do need to caution that those captions are not 100% accurate. So they do need to be reviewed and they need to be corrected. So
yeah, they're about 85 to 95% accuracy depending on the content being presented. If it's more technical content with words that might not be easily found in your regular dictionary, then it's going to be harder. Even though at the school, I'm at the School of Nursing, a lot of our technical words are nicely captioned. Again, depends on the presenter. If they mumble or slur or speak slowly or fast, that's going to be different. But when we have a student who requests accommodations, what we usually do is then have it manually captioned for them to get to as close as possible to 100%.
So other questions, somebody put in a handy link, that was great. I use Camtasia, which is really sophisticated editing, you're right, and closed captioning to fairly good accuracy. If your institution doesn't subscribe to it, it's a one-time software installation less than 200. It is, you got to know what you're doing, Kelsey, so you're right, and more power to you because it is an editing software. So some of these tools are much more, kind of heads and tails. You cut out the heads and tails and maybe make a cut in the middle. Whereas Camtasia, you can actually have audio beds and video beds, and it's much more sophisticated. But if you need that and want that, that's a great price, and it is a very good tool.
Yeah, I would say Camtasia is a great tool, relatively inexpensive compared to all these other tools. Good for academic technologists, more so than faculty, or faculty who are very techy.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think we've missed any questions or comments. We've had a good conversation here, everyone. So if you have any more questions, certainly feel free to put it in the chat. And I think everybody has our handout, right? We've already done that. We've already given them the handout. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to that because our handout can actually be printed from this link. And all of those, if you click on that, it's a digital link, so all of the references you'll be able to get to, because it really is interesting research. Nima and I have actually looked at a lot of different papers, and it's really been very interesting to kind of learn as much as we can about this. We've both been, my background has been in media production for many years, and so for me, I want to know that if I'm creating something that someone's going to watch it and that they're going to be able to use it. So that's what we really want you to do. Oh, and we've got a handout there, that link.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think part of the motivation for looking at all this research was that we work with faculty extensively, and so we wanted to be able to tell them with a large degree of certainty that these are recommendations and these are why, not just based on our opinion, but based on the current research in the field. And fortunately for us, there's been a lot of research. It just kind of exploded around 2014 because everyone was using video and everyone wanted to figure out, is it working? How is it working? What are effective practices for this? And what should our recommendations be? And as many of you are aware, that was a time when everyone was like, okay, we're going online, so we're going to record all our classroom lectures and put them online. And it wasn't working. So they would record in-class lectures and put them online, and students wouldn't watch them. It'd be hours and hours and hours of effort by the faculty. It would go online, and they would look at viewing analytics and see students just weren't watching. Very low viewing statistics. And so they were like, okay, what do we have to do to get them to watch it? What do we have to do to engage them? And then they realized that that same lecture in class has some effective properties that are just not translating into the online environment. So for us, this was a question and a journey, and we've really enjoyed it, and we're excited about showing it to some of you guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so any other comments or questions? Thank you, Paul. Thanks for joining us, all of you. Great. I'm glad that you're going to put it to immediate use. Yay. I'm sure that's wonderful. So, yeah, and you have all this reference material. I appreciate your time and your questions, and I loved your comments. So it was fun to be engaged with you. So thank you all.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Susan and Nima, for presenting today. Just a quick reminder that we do have these monthly meetings. So join us on October 17th at 3 o'clock for Think Your Way Out of the Problem.